He's getting very interesting. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Can I have your attention, please? Thank you. We are in level 2 evidence this morning. So please, the public gallery is closed, and no one, whether a member of the legal team, an accredited journalist, or members of the inquiry staff or contractors, will be permitted to bring an electronic device into the hearing room. This includes mobile phones, smartphones, iPod buds, and vapes. And that's illustrative, not a complete list. If you need to arrange safe storage of any such devices during level 2 hearings, please ask at the security desk. Please remember after breaks, as we're going to be in level 2, certainly for the rest of the morning, please make sure you allow enough time to get back through security to return to the hearing room. Thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Rickard.
Commander Murphy.
Morning.
Just in case you need reminding, you're still under oath.
Yes, thank you.
Yesterday, Commander Murphy, you gave evidence about the 3 suspects, Boshoff, Petrov and Fedotov, their arrival in the United Kingdom, their movements within the country between the 2nd and 4th of March.
Yes.
In particular, of course, the journeys made by Boshoff and Petrov to Salisbury, and then their departure back to Moscow on the 4th of March.
Yes.
Today, I will ask you, first of all, about the RT interview with Boshoff and Petrov that we mentioned yesterday, which took place in September 2018. And then I will ask you some further questions about your wider investigation into the background of those individuals, their true identities, and your assessment that they are members of the GRU, and in particular Unit 29155 within the GRU.
Thank you.
But before, though, we turn to any of that, I'd like to go back to the one thread that was left from your evidence yesterday.
Yes.
which relates to CCTV cameras in Macklin Road in Salisbury.
Yes.
I wonder if we could first of all just have up on the screen, please, INQ 005819, page 61. Commander Murphy, you will recall this map. It's one of the maps of Journey 4, as we've called it.
Yes.
So in other words, in fact, the last journey on the Sunday, the 4th of March. And you will note, as we looked yesterday, that in making your assessment about where the individuals travelled on the yellow part of the route,
Yes.
you were able to rely in part on the absence of any CCTV sightings in cameras in Macklin Road.
Yes, correct.
We can see, can't we? In fact, there are 4 cameras towards the top left. Just to be clear, there's the pink one, which is on Devizes Road. We talked about that.
Yes.
That's separate.
Yes.
The one sort of closest to it, that's what we've described as the India Avenue camera, is it not?
It is. Yes.
So it's the other 2 which are on Macklin Road.
Yes.
And as it's clear, on the Sunday, and we won't look at it, but if we looked at the Journey 3 map, they're there as well, aren't they?
They are.
For that day, your evidence has been that you were able to take into account the absence of any sighting of the 2 men on those cameras
Yes.
in making that assessment about the route. And the question that prompted this was what the position was on the Saturday.
Yes.
Because if we could just call up on screen, perhaps we can call both pages 36 and 40 of the graphics back up on screen. Thank you. What we see there we have Journey 1 and Journey 2. So that, in other words, the 2 routes on the Saturday.
Yes.
And we don't see any reference at all to Macklin Road cameras. We can see what we've described as the India Avenue camera towards the top left, but not the Macklin Road cameras.
Yes.
So the question which you were going to, with your team,
Yes.
investigate overnight was whether, for example, the cameras weren't working that day or you hadn't got the film from them, in which case one was left with an absence of information.
Yes.
Or whether the position was, as it was on Sunday, that you had seen the film from those Macklin Road cameras and that you were able to say that Petrov and Boshoff hadn't walked along Macklin Road that day. Can you assist us?
Yes, absolutely. So thank you for the time to do this, but just to clarify, sir, so those same 2 cameras existed on the Saturday. They were recovered at the same time. They had footage, so we were able to view them. And as per the Sunday, there were no sightings of either Petrov or Boshoff on those cameras.
So it's what I can inelegantly call a positive negative finding.
It is, sir, yes.
Right.
Thank you. We'll move on. And we will go then to the Russia Today interview. You'll recall, Commander Murphy, very start of your evidence yesterday, we talked about the chronology of Operation Katerva.
Yes.
In fact, if we could go back to the police report. So it's INQ 005820, page 8, paragraph 20. We discussed, did we not, the various stages of the charging process.
Yes.
And that's what paragraph 20 contains. The submission of papers to the CPS in June, their authorisation of charges in July, then that period, which you explained between July and September, when the decision to charge them was not communicated to the public.
Yes.
And then, and this is of significance, 4 lines up from the bottom, the charges were announced on the 5th of September 2018, and you refer at the very end of that paragraph to a public statement being made by Assistant Commissioner Neil Basu.
Yes.
And this is of some relevance because we know, do we not, that it was a week or so after that press conference that this interview on Russia Today took place.
Yes, and probably important context for this interview as well is that throughout the operation, so we'd received a number of note verbals and other communications from the Russian state into the UK government and or into our investigation. From an investigative perspective, we hadn't provided any further information to anyone about our investigation outside of this. So this was largely the first time we were saying publicly anything of significance connected to the Caterva investigation.
Yes, precisely, and it is important context. So, noting that paragraph, the reference to the press conference on the 5th of September, if we could go, there is a record of that press conference at INQ 004464, please. We see at the very top there the date, the same date, 5th of September.
Yes.
Is this, I'm going to go through this document fairly briefly, but tell us, Commander, is it essentially a press release?
Yes, it is, yes.
So
I apologise. So it describes the process, and then it describes the lines provided by each of the persons present, because within this press conference was also a representative of the DPP, so the Director of Public Prosecutions, and also Dame Sally, who we've heard from, was present and delivered health advice in the same press conference.
Just let me see what had happened before. Fairly soon, relatively soon after the Salisbury incident, there had been public statements made by, amongst others, the Prime Minister,
Correct.
which pointed towards which contained the allegation that it looked like something attributable to Russia.
Yes, correct. On the 12th of March, the Prime Minister stood in the House and suggested that it was Novichok and that it was linked to the Russian state, and they should respond. I think they were given 2 days by the Prime Minister to respond to that allegation, and then on the 14th, a further statement by the Prime Minister when they had not responded.
12th of March.
12th of March.
March.
Yes,
So
it's quite soon
very
after.
soon,
Yes, sir. Yes,
It's within just over a week.
sir. Yes.
That hadn't named, presumably, anybody.
No, sir. So up until that point,
Yes, go on.
up until that point, we had suggested that it was Novichok and that the Russian state were involved, but beyond that, not the status of our investigation into any individuals.
Quite. And is this the first time that individuals are named by, any of the British authorities?
It is, yes. And what followed this was a further statement by the Prime Minister in the House after this statement by the Assistant Commissioner Neil Basu, the Dame Sally and the DPP.
Thank you. Further statement. Got it?
As I say, we'll go through this document in a little detail. If we could just look towards the bottom of the page, Chief, and just picking up on something you said, Commander, do you see in bold there the word statement by Assistant Commissioner Neil Basu?
Yes.
Just to be clear, the document we're looking at is limited to what he said on
Yes.
that day.
Oh, okay.
Heard your evidence that others were there, Dame Sally and so on.
Yes.
But just for clarity, I think what we will find is that this document is limited to Assistant Commissioner Basu's words.
Thank you. Help.
So if we could just scroll down, please. We see him announcing what he described as the most significant moment so far in the investigation. Go to the second page. Again, makes the same point. You see today's announcement by the CPS marks the most significant development in this investigation. Yes?
Yes.
There is a recapping of the facts. First of all, the Skripals, and then reference to Dawn Sturgess's death. And then at the bottom of that page, so at the bottom of the second page, do you see at the very last line, he says, our rationale for linking the two investigations, that's the Skripal and the Sturgess investigations, is
Yes.
primarily based on the following four facts, so that we then go to the top of the next page. Firstly, he says, our own analysis and the Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons in The Hague has confirmed the same type of Novichok was used in both cases. Second, the nerve agent is one of the rarest chemical warfare agents in the world, and its discovery twice in such close proximity is beyond a coincidence. Third, the manner in which the bottle and packaging has been adapted makes it a perfect cover for smuggling the weapon into the country and a perfect delivery method for the attack against the Skripal's front door. And finally, he said the lack of crossover between the known movements of the suspects and Dawn and Charlie's known movements around Salisbury and the fact there's no evidence to suggest they've been targeted means it's much more likely that Dawn and Charlie found. Well, that makes sense.
Found the Novichok.
Found the bottle.
Yeah.
So is that a useful sort of touchstone? That is the sort of public reasoning in support of
Absolutely.
of the charging decisions as at September 2018.
Yes.
And then just looking further down that page, sorry, immediately below those bullet points, in fact, perhaps important to note that Assistant Commissioner Basu makes a public health point. It chimes with other evidence. He says it's impossible to guarantee there are no other materials present in Salisbury. Therefore, we're repeating the advice from Public Health England. People should not pick up items which do not belong to them. Advice by that stage, as we've heard, had been given in the wake of the Sturgess incident.
That's correct.
And then further down the page, do we see he says, I am therefore appealing for anyone who has information about the suspects named by the CPS today. You've made the point that was the first occasion on which they were named as Alexander Petrov and Ruslan Boshirov, to contact the police. And then towards the bottom of that page, he says, I will now go through their movements in detail.
Yes.
And again, was this the first time? I mean, this chronology, this narrative is, of course, relatively familiar to
Yes.
us. Was this the first time that this level of detail had been given?
Yes, it was, absolutely. We hadn't spoken publicly or issued any information in this level of detail.
Right. So we can then cast our eyes down what, as I said, are...
Well, can we just see, Mr. O'Connor, because I'm interested to see whether it went into the same detail as is now known and that I was given yesterday.
Yes, well, so indeed. So immediately below that, there's a reference to their arrival. And we can see at 3 p.m. on Friday, the 2nd of March, the suspects arrived at Gatwick Airport. We will note, of course, and perhaps I should have mentioned this earlier, there's no mention of Mr. Fedotov at this stage.
Yes, that's correct. This is focused on Petrov and Boshirov.
And we heard your evidence yesterday that the charging decision against Mr. Fedotov, and indeed the announcement of that decision came, in fact, years, not later.
Yes, 2021 in the end, yes.
Yeah.
So that's accurate if one takes it as a reference to Petrov and Boshirov. Going over the page, it's believed they travelled by train into London, Victoria Station.
Yeah.
Then travelled on London public transport to Waterloo Station, travelled on to the City Stay Hotel, clearly drawing from the cell sighting evidence we saw yesterday.
Yes, absolutely. And probably important to say at this point, that whilst this is a high-level summary of the evidence we went through yesterday, sir, after this announcement, we continued our investigation, clearly, and so a lot more information has become available over the time.
Well, that's why I wanted to have a look at it.
Yes.
For example, this asserted at that stage on the material then being disclosed and then available that they'd gone to Waterloo.
So this is a high-level summary of what we understood to be the case at the time, with a view to supporting the charging decision.
I don't mean going to Waterloo on the Saturday. I mean on the day of arrival.
Yes.
Between Gatwick and the City Stay Hotel.
Yes.
That's what's being suggested.
Absolutely, sir.
Right.
And as you now know from yesterday's evidence, we have been able to provide a lot more detail now about what we understand their movements to be.
Yeah. Thank you.
Moving on, Saturday the 3rd of March, leaving the hotel, going to Waterloo Station, then catching a train to Salisbury, arriving at approximately 2:25.
Yes.
Nothing about their movements in Salisbury. Believed to have taken a similar route when they returned to London on the afternoon of Saturday, leaving Salisbury approximately 4:10, arriving in Bow 8:05.
Yes.
We will come to the CCTV stills, which were shown a little bit later in the press conference, which do include some detail about Salisbury.
Yes.
And then there is a public statement of the assessment about the purpose of the trip to Salisbury, the assessment of it being for reconnaissance. Do you see that?
Yes.
Then moving on Sunday, the 4th of March, They made the same journey from the hotel, again using the underground, from Bow to Waterloo. Arriving at approximately 8:05 a.m. That's a little earlier than the time we discussed yesterday.
As I say, since this initial statement, we've clarified lots of the detail.
Before continuing their journey by train to Salisbury, and then there is a reference to CCTV in Salisbury showing them in the vicinity of Mr. Skripal's house, and the belief that they contaminated the front door with Novichok.
Yes.
Returned to Waterloo Station, and then on to Heathrow that day, leaving at 10:30, which was the time we discussed yesterday.
Yes.
There's again a reference to the Public Health England advice, confident no risk to members of the public who are on the same flight or trains or public transport. Then there's a paragraph dealing with the city stay testing,
Yes.
the results, and also then reading further down towards the bottom of the page, then a reference to the assessment of public health risk relating to people who'd stayed in that room.
Yes.
And we will recall that you gave evidence yesterday about being ready to contact. You had a sort of list of people to call, and this was the occasion when that took place, I think.
Yes, I believe the press conference actually started at 11 or just shortly after 11. So the plan was from 11 o'clock we would have a team who were then available to make contact with all of the people so that had stayed in that room at the city stay.
Then going over the page, just below the top, we see, to help understand the suspect's movements as fully as possible, we're releasing a selection of CCTV images that clearly show the men and the clothing they were wearing over the weekend of the 3rd and 4th of March. A reference to the fact, as we have reminded ourselves, it was a particularly cold weekend, there was heavy snow.
Yes.
And then a series of references to CCTV images with which we are familiar, which we looked at yesterday and indeed before that, starting with the 2 photographs of them arriving at the same time through those gates in Gatwick.
Yes.
Others in Salisbury.
Well, we've got them coming into Gatwick. The two, one of each, as it were.
Yes. Yes. And then Salisbury train station, sir.
Yep.
And then on the 4th of March,
Salisbury train station.
again, exiting.
On Salisbury train station on the
On the Saturday.
On the Saturday and the Sunday, sir. Then.
Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
But it may be that there is certainly, as we will see, that when we come to the interview, some of the suggested discrepancies between the account Petrov and Bosworth gave and what we now understand to be the position does relate to the Saturday, and so all that was provided by way of CCTV images on the Saturday was an image of them leaving Salisbury.
Yes, and I suppose it's really important to give you the context behind our involvement in this press conference as well, was really as a police appeal. So we were appealing to the public in addition to allowing and hoping that the DPP would update on the charging decision for their assistance and support. So the images were selected in order to provide photographs of the individuals that would help the public to be able to contact us and see if they'd recognised them and had any information.
Yeah. So just a single still from Saturday,
Yes.
back in the train station about to leave. Then, as far as the Sunday is concerned, a few more Salisbury photographs arriving at the station at 11:48 in the morning.
Yes.
Then Wilton Road, 11:58. That would be journey 1.
Yes, I believe that actually was an image from the garage CCTV.
I'm sorry, can you just scroll back a bit, please? Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry. So I need to correct that. You're right.
Yes.
That would be journey 3.
Yes.
Yes. And moments before the attack.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
then 1305 on Fisherton Street.
That was the image, just after they'd taken a photograph on the bridge. I believe it was Petrov taking a photograph on the mobile device, and they were walking towards the camera. So it's a zoomed-in image from that.
Yes. And then another image, also on Fisherton Street, shortly later afterwards.
Yep.
And then I think the last of the Salisbury images, 150. So we've missed out Journey 4 in that little sequence.
Yes.
A final photograph of them back at the train station.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then, in terms of the photographs, the last one back at Heathrow that evening.
Yes, for their departure.
So we will bear that in mind, as that was the information given. Those were the photographs that were published. And then carrying on with Assistant Commissioner Bassu's statement, as you say, a request to the public for information.
Yes.
I think contact details had already been given, but they're not. And then there's a section of the statement, if we read to the bottom of that page and over to the top of the next one, where there's some detail given about what we know as Operation Reed.
Yes.
The investigation relating to the bottle, the discovery of the bottle, the contact that had been made with the manufacturers, the assessment that it wasn't a genuine bottle, and so on.
Yes.
And a little bit further down there, just we can see towards the bottom of the screen, we cannot account for the whereabouts of the bottle, nozzle or box between the attack on the Scripples on the 4th of March and when Charlie Rowley said he found it on Wednesday the 27th of June.
Yes, and I have to say that's one of the early accounts from Charlie detailing the 27th of June. Clearly, there have been subsequent information relating to the potential for Charlie finding it.
Indeed, and we will come back to that next week.
Yes.
And again, a further request for assistance from the public on this occasion relating to the bottle. And finally, this is now the end of his statement, a sort of repetition of all the various requests for assistance that have been made during the course of the statement.
Yes.
Thank you. So that is the. You've helped us by saying that others gave statements at that press conference. I'm not going to go with those. In fact, even what Assistant Commissioner Bassu said provoked much public comment domestically and internationally. I imagine we all have some memory of that ourselves.
Yes.
Tell us from your perspective.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, shortly after this, the Prime Minister then made a statement in the House as well. So it had very wide reach in respects of an update. And being the first time that we had published any photographs of the subjects and or named them in their alias names, as we now know, we then received a lot of calls from the public, and also this was part of the start of an international strategy, which I know we'll come to, where of course we then reached out to a number of countries all around the world to support and assist our investigation.
And so that is the context in which, about nearly 2 weeks later, the interview with Petrov and Bosharov took place and was screened
Yes.
worldwide. We'll play it in just a moment. Just before we do, could I just have up on screen, please, INQ 005843. This is a transcript, Commander Murphy, I believe prepared by your team.
Yes.
May I write the date on it, please, Mr. O'Connor?
The date of the broadcast, the interview itself, is the 13th of September.
That's when it's broadcast?
Yes.
Yes, 13th of September.
Correct. I'm afraid the transcript is not dated. I don't know if Commander Murphy can help us.
I think it was sometime later, but not within a few
No,
months,
it's
I
not the
believe.
date of the transcript I'm interested
Yes.
in, Mr. Murphy, it's the date of the broadcast.
Well, we have that, the 13th. So may I invite you to adduce this transcript into evidence in total?
Yes.
Thank you. So with all of that said, may I now suggest that we play the video in full? We have, of course, seen a few minutes of it earlier in these proceedings. It's INQ 004177.
Вы позвонили мне на мобильный телефон и сказали, что вы Руслан Баширов и Александр Петров. Александр Петров и Руслан Баширов. Вы реально похожи на то, что нам показывали из Британии, на те фотографии и на те видео. Вы на самом деле кто?
Мы на самом деле те, кого и показывали.
Руслан Баширов.
Александр Петров.
Это ваши настоящие имена.
Да.
Да, это наше настоящее имя.
Но вы даже сейчас, когда об этом говорите, вы вот честно выглядите очень напряженными.
А как бы
Не,
вы
напуганными.
выглядели
Когда
после
вашу
всего?
жизнь такой вот раз и перевернули с ног на голову, просто одним днем и сломали.
На этих записях, которые мы видим из Лондона, где вы ходите в этих уже знаменитых пуховиках, кроссовочках, по Солсбери, это вы.
Да.
Да, это мы.
Что вы там делали?
Ну, друзья нам давно уже советовали посетить этот прекрасный город.
Солсбери.
Да,
Прекрасный город.
да.
Это
а чем он
туристический
прекрасен?
город. Там есть знаменитый собор, Солсберийский собор. Он знаменит не только во всей Европе, он знаменит, я так думаю, даже во всем мире. Он знаменит своим шпилем 123-метровым. Он знаменит своими часами, самыми первыми часами, которые были изобретены в мире, которые до сих пор идут.
То есть
Вообще-
вы поехали в Солсбери посмотреть на часы.
Да нет, но с самого начала мы планировали приехать в Лондон и оторваться, грубо говоря. Это была не бизнес-поездка сейчас. И мы распланировали так, что мы и в Лондоне побываем, и съездим в Солсбери. Естественно, это все должно было быть одним днем. Но когда мы туда прилетели, у нас даже самолет, мы думали, что не с первого раза посадят, потому что в Англии 2 и 3 числа был просто транспортный коллапс. Да что там транспорт? Там было, как это сказать, снегопад. Настолько мощный, что завалило практически все города. И мы никуда не смогли добраться.
По всем телевизорам показывали то, что 2-3 числа железные дороги, они вообще не работали. Автомобильные дороги то же самое. Они были перекрыты полицейскими, перекрыты скорой помощью, и было вообще перекрыто движение. Не было вообще движения никакого. Все поезда, ничто, вообще ничего не ходило. Почему это ничего не показывает?
Вы можете описать, ну, может, не поминутно, ну, почасово, ну, или хотя бы сколько вы помните. Вы прилетели в Великобританию. Как вы говорите, оторваться и посмотреть на собор и некие часы в Солсбери. Вы можете описать, что вы делали в Англии? Вы 2 дня там были, правильно?
Ну, 3 получается, да.
3 дня. Что вы делали эти 3 дня?
Ну, 2 числа мы прилетели, приехали на вокзал посмотреть расписание, куда мы сможем съездить.
Мы вообще-то планировали одним днем съездить. Просто одним днем съездить и
Ну,
посмотреть.
Именно в Солсбери. 1 день. Там достаточно, там больше 1 дня делать нечего.
Это нормальный туристический. Солсбери, он город нормальный туристический.
Хорошо, это я поняла, это вы планировали. По факту, что вы делали? Вы прилетели, там снегопад, туда чего-то не ходит, поезда не ходят. Дальше что? Что вы делали?
Нет, мы приехали в Солсбери 3 числа. Пробыли там ровно, наверное, пытались погулять по городу, но так как был город весь полностью завален снегом, нас хватило ровно на полчаса.
Да,
Мы
нету
все
ни одной
промокли.
фотографии, ни одно СМИ, ни один телеканал не показывает то, что в этот день, 3 числа, в этом городе был коллапс, снежный коллапс. Там невозможно было пройти никуда. Мы вымокли все по колено.
То есть вы полчаса погуляли, вымокли и дальше.
Естественно, мы ехали, чтобы посетить Стоунхендж, Олд Сарум, собор Девы Марии. Но этого не получилось, потому что там была, ну, как-то по-русски, жижа. Город был в полной жиже. Мы промокли, вернулись на вокзал, и на ближайшей электричке мы уехали обратно. Минут 40 мы провели на вокзале в кафе.
Пили кофе, пили горячий кофе, потому что мы вымокли все. И мы максимум провели 3 числа час.
Может
или
быть, час, да, там час лишним.
Потому что
И
это
то
невозможно.
потому что электрички ходили с большим разрывом, именно, наверное, из-за транспортного коллапса. Мы вернулись в Лондон и продолжили наше путешествие.
Мы гуляли по Лондону, мы ходили
То есть в
вечером.
Солсбери вы провели всего час,
3 числа, да,
3
потому что
числа.
невозможно было никуда пройти.
а другого числа?
А 4 числа мы вернулись, потому что в Лондоне все растаяло, была теплая погода. Мы подумали,
Солнце
что
светило.
целенаправленно хотели посетить Олд Сарум и собор. И решили завершить это дело 4 числа.
Завершить это дело, это какое дело?
Ну, посетить эти.
Посмотреть вот этот знаменитый собор. Сходить на
Посмотрели?
Олд Сарум. Мы посмотрели.
4 числа, да, посмотрели, но опять-таки там в обед начался такой ливень со снегом, что мы
Почему тоже никто не говорит?
уехали раньше времени,
Собор
чем
красивый.
планировали там находиться.
Собор очень красивый, там очень много туристов, там очень много русских туристов, там очень много русскоговорящих туристов.
Кстати, с собора должно быть очень много фотографий,
Вас в том числе.
которые должны были, да,
Которые
вас
должны были показать.
наверное,
Вы же
показать,
фоткались, наверное, у
наверное,
собора?
показать СМИ.
Конечно.
Фоткались.
Мы сидели в парке, мы сидели, пили кофе, мы заходили в кафе, пили кофе, мы гуляли. Мы гуляли, наслаждались вот этой вот английской готикой, вот этой
Почему-то
красотой.
этого не показывают. Показывают только наше нахождение на вокзале.
Покажите нам эти фотки, мы
Наши
покажем.
наши на вокзале.
За то время, что вы были в Солсбери, вы подходили к дому Скрипалей?
Ну, может быть, мы к нему и подходили.
Вы знаете, где
если
дом
бы мы знали,
Скрипалей?
где он
Я нет.
находится.
А
И
вы?
я не
Если бы
знаю,
мы
где
знали,
дом
где он
Скрипалей.
находится.
Может, и проходили мимо, может, и не проходили. Я не знаю, я вообще не слышал до вот этой ситуации, пока не начался вот этот кошмар с нами. И я не слышал эту фамилию, я не знал ничего про них.
Когда вы прилетели в Великобританию, когда вы были в Лондоне или когда вы были в Солсбери, за все время, что вы там были, у вас был с собой новичок или какой-то другой отравляющий яд или какая-то опасная жидкость?
Нет.
Мне кажется, это вообще бред.
У вас был с собой флакон духов Нина Ричи, который демонстрирует британская сторона как evidence, как вещественное доказательство вашего, как они считают, преступления.
Нормальным мужикам с собой возить женские духи – это не глупо. Ну, даже реально проходя таможню, проходишь когда таможню, проверяют все вещи. И просто любой полицейский при досмотре, у него, ну, я думаю, если бы у нас что-то было бы, у них бы возникли бы эти вопросы бы. Зачем у мужчины в багаже лежат женские духи?
По крайней мере, даже у простых людей, наверное,
Простых,
возникли
наверное,
бы
были
эти
бы.
вопросы. Зачем мужчинам женские духи?
Где бы простые люди увидели ваши духи?
Не, проходя таможню, проходишь когда таможню?
Короче говоря, у вас были с собой духи Нина Ричи
Нет.
или не было?
Нет,
Нет.
конечно.
К вопросу о нормальных мужиках. Вы все время на всех видео вы показаны вместе, все время вместе, находились вместе, жили вместе, ходили везде вместе. Вас вообще, так скажу, что объединяет вас двоих?
Знаете, давайте мы не будем лезть в частную жизнь, в личную жизнь. Мы пришли сюда к вам за защитой. У нас получается какой-то допрос, и мы начинаем углубляться. Мы у вас защиты просим, мы у вас не на допросе.
Мы журналисты, мы не защитники, не адвокаты. Вот мой следующий как раз вопрос. Вы в СМИ пошли зачем? Вы ваши фотографии какое-то время назад опубликовали, ваши имена, вы все это время сидели тихо. Сегодня вы мне позвонили и решили пообщаться со СМИ. Для чего?
Защиты
Если-
попросить.
Если это можно назвать тихо, после того, как наша жизнь превратилась в кошмар, мы даже не понимали, что нам делать, куда нам идти. В полицию, в Следственный комитет, не знаю, в посольство Великобритании.
В ФСБ пойти. Мы
Что
Посольство,
делать?
в посольство
А тут-
Великобритании зачем?
Ну, просто мы в таких непонятках, что нам делать? Куда нам сунуться, что алло, люди.
Знаете, когда полностью жизнь перевернулась и вытряхнулась, ты не понимаешь, что тебе делать и куда пойти. И как многие пишут, говорят, почему бы мне прийти в посольство Великобритании, не объяснить вот это все.
А вы
Что
читаете,
как?
да, что про вас пишут, говорят, смотрите?
Нет, не читаем. Конечно, читаем.
Конечно, читаешь. Потому что мы на улицу выйти не можем. Мы боимся, мы опасаемся.
Чего?
Мы опасаемся за себя, мы опасаемся за жизнь, мы опасаемся за близких, мы опасаемся за тех людей, которые нас знают.
Вы
Вы же
боитесь,
сами-
что вас что, убьет английская разведка или что?
Так
с
мы
вами
не
случилось?
знаем,
Вы даже
что
наши
будет
публикации почитайте.
Что пишут наши
Что там
журналисты.
за вознаграждение?
Я не видела, что за
а,
вознаграждение. За
това-
ваши головы?
Ага, товарищ Полоумный Гудков там
Гудков.
вообще объявил путешествие в Англию, кто приведет двоих персонажей. Это нормально считаете? И это вы считаете просто сидеть, ходить, улыбаться, не бояться и ходить, здороваться? Да любой нормальный человек, он будет бояться. Все.
Почему вы позвонили мне? Почему вы пришли на наш канал?
Ну, так получилось, мы сегодня читали новости, как раз-таки вот ваш телеграм.
Вы же сегодня сами в Телеграме
Теперь я знаю, кто
Дали.
читает мой телеграм.
дали фору. Я не знаю, можно это говорить в эфир или нет.
Ну, говорите. Нельзя, не дадим.
Вперед, сукины дети, как вы сказали.
А, это я написала все. В очередь сукины дети я написала.
Да.
Вот. И поэтому мы, прочитав, посмотрев это, мы решили позвонить вам и прийти именно к вам.
Как на самом деле, если бы Путин сегодня не сказал, что он же обратился сегодня к вам, да, с экранов, и это было везде в СМИ, он сказал, что вот мы вычислили этих людей, мы знаем, кто эти люди, и пусть они уже придут в СМИ и объявятся. Если бы он это не сказал, вы бы пришли?
Ну, знаете, Маргарита, скорее всего, наверное, это было бы выложено в сеть в виде видеообращения. Потому что
Вы бы записали видеообращение,
И выложили
мы-
в сеть.
мы раньше не сталкивались никогда со средствами массовой информации. И было бы проще, наверное, излить душу именно в интернет. Потому что, ну, грубо говоря, нас загнали
Попросить
в угол.
защиты, помощи.
А сегодня вот именно, ну, мы не видели эфир, я просто услышал это по радио и предложил
Был толчок.
позвонить вам.
Вы работаете в ГРУ?
А вы работаете в ГРУ?
Я нет, а вы?
Я нет.
И я нет.
Меня никто не обвиняет в том, что я работаю в ГРУ, а вас-то обвиняют.
Причем
слава
ваши
богу.
коллеги обвиняют.
Не только,
и
не
слава-
только
да.
мои коллеги, вы журналисты,
И-
видимо,
и-
имеете в виду.
И слава
Вас
богу.
обвиняют правоохранительные органы Великобритании, что вы работаете в ГРУ.
Да, это, наверное, самое страшное.
А где вы работаете? Вы взрослый мужчина, вы должны на что-то жить.
Ну, мы предприниматели средней руки.
Что
Просто
значит
если мы
средние руки?
сейчас расскажем про наш бизнес, то мы же сузим.
Пострадают и люди пострадают, с которыми мы работаем, и мы не хотим этого.
Мы сузим круг для
Ну, расскажите хоть
поиска
что-то,
для
понимаете?
ваших
Потому
коллег.
что и мне, и аудитории, вы же хотите, чтобы люди вам поверили? Людей уже много месяцев убеждают в обратном. Кто-то вам верит, кто-то вам не верит. Когда вы говорите, мы в ГРУ не работаем, но про бизнес тоже не расскажем, у меня возникают вопросы, аудитории возникнут вопросы. Что, если вы не работаете в ГРУ, вы не шпионы, вы никого не травили, вы просто туристы, чем вы занимаетесь?
Но если вкратце, это фитнес-индустрия. То, что касается спортивного питания, витамины, микроэлементы, протеины, гейнеры и так далее. Просто если рассказать немножко шире, опять-таки наши партнеры и, как сказать, широкий круг моих
Вы
знакомых.
уже вспотели, я включу кондиционер.
Да, да, жарко.
Да, да. Да, вы занимаетесь фитнес-индустрией.
Да.
То есть что, вы консультируете в Европе каких-то людей, которые хотят
Почему в
накачать
Европе?
бицепс или что?
Почему в Европе?
А почему в Европе? Это мой следующий вопрос, потому что, ну, вы на этот ответьте, а следующий вопрос будет как раз...
Консультировать
почему в
здесь.
Здесь вы
И, да, и
консультируете.
сейчас, наоборот, тренд консультировать не по наращиванию бицепсов, а наоборот по, как сказать, по построению фигуры. Так называемая сушка.
Правильное питание.
ЗОЖ, ПП.
Здоровый образ жизни.
То есть вы работаете с клиентами, которым вы помогаете сделать красивое тело? Или вы в фитнес-клубах?
Вкратце.
Тренер это называется.
Вкратце, да.
Не хотелось
Если-
бы это
если
всё
не-
выдавать огласку,
не реш-
потому что, ну, и углубляться, и в работу, мы, скажем, во все вот эти вот вопросы, я, на самом деле, я не хотел бы, чтобы пострадали люди из числа наших клиентов, чтобы как-то пострадали ли те люди, с которыми мы работаем. Вот, и ну, я бы не хотел бы углубляться сюда внутрь.
Хорошо. Британцы утверждают, что за последние пару лет вы чуть ли не десятки раз были в Европе, в первую очередь в Швейцарии. Что вы там, как люди, занимающиеся фитнес-тренингами и наращиванием мышц,
Да,
делали?
британцы много что они утверждают. Они
То есть вы не были в Европе?
что мы и жили в номере, который показывает там одноместную кровать. Вот, да. А то, что соседние номера двухместные, там трехместные, и это нормально для туриста, нормально для приезжего приехать, заселиться в одном номере двухместном, в двухкомнатном номере, да, и жить. Экономия денег, и это просто это быт, жить вместе, это веселее, это проще, ну, и это нормально для нормального любого человека.
Слушайте, это вы можете даже не оправдываться. Односпальная у вас была кровать или двуспальная. Вот это сейчас весь мир волнует меньше всего, я вам честно скажу. Давайте, вы в Европу ездили за эти пару лет? как
Конечно,
уже
да. В
ездили?
основном это именно по бизнесу. И
В основном в Швейцарию.
это, да, опять-таки,
Это
не
так и
наращивать.
есть, да.
Нет, не в основном в Швейцарию. Швейцарию, ну, если
это всё
не изменяет память,
преувеличено
мы пару
по
раз в
количеству.
Швейцарию в этом году залетели. Новый год
А
в
что
Швейцарии.
вы там делали? Как ваш бизнес связан? Я понимаю, вы не хотите раскрывать там своих клиентов, там название, еще что-то, но как ваш бизнес связан с Европой и Швейцарией?
Это не всегда по бизнесу мы летаем. Вот именно Швейцария мы летали на отдых. Ну и по бизнесу тоже там были, но дай бог памяти, когда это было.
Прилететь в Женеву, это не означает, это нормально. Это прилетел в Женеву, это ближайший путь доехать до Монбланка. Это съездить, поехать во Францию через несколько километров, посетить Францию. Это удобно.
Так вы по бизнесу летали или отдыхать?
Нет.
Нет, и так, и так. В основном-то по бизнесу поездки.
А по бизнесу как ваш бизнес с Европой стыкуется?
Ну, именно по спортивному питанию. То, что в Европе продаются
То
препараты,
есть вы
витамины.
покупаете там питание и привозите сюда?
Да, не
Спортивное.
то, что мы их покупаем, складируем в сумки и привозим. Изучаем рынок, смотрим новинки, какие есть. Специальные, из БАДов, из аминокислот, из витаминов, из микроэлементов. Выбираем самое необходимое, приезжаем сюда и решаем вопросы, как доставить новинки этого рынка сюда. Это одно из направлений, то, чем мы занимаемся.
Вот у меня здесь папочка со скриншотами. Это вы, да?
Да.
Это вы, это ваша одежда?
Да,
Вы сейчас в другой одежде.
да. Но она у
У
нас,
нас
кстати,
она осталась, эта одежда.
в
у меня-
гардеробе.
У меня,
висит.
да, в гардеробе вот эта куртка висит.
Ботинки купленные в Англии.
Прорекламированные,
куртка.
да, кроссовки New Balance. Это вся одежда, это одежда, в которых и сейчас мы ходим.
Нет,
Она-
здесь
И она у вас сейчас в России?
Здесь ты в
Вы
ботинках,
не-
которые ты купил на Оксфорд-стрит, если не ошибаюсь.
Причем 3 числа.
Потому
были
что когда мы
ботинки.
3
Ботинки были
промокли,
куплены.
да,
вымокли 3 числа и
Вернулись
вернулись.
в Лондон и
И
пошопились.
переобулись, да, пошли, купили себе, я пошел себе, купил обувь. Вот. Я был уже на следующий день в другой обуви.
Эта одежда у вас сейчас в России?
Да, в
Конечно.
России она
Мы
у нас
можем
есть,
ее
мы ее можем
посмотреть?
показать,
Да.
конечно.
Отлично. А с собой у вас нет ее случайно?
Куртка, да, у меня с собой куртка, она здесь.
Вот это?
Да, вот эта куртка,
Ну,
она у меня с собой здесь.
У меня все эти вещи тоже
Потом
дома лежат в
подснимем?
гардеробе.
Хорошо. Вот картинка, которая озадачила весь мир. Гатвик. Вы выходите через гейт, через ворота, буквально в одно и то же время, чуть ли не в одну и ту же секунду. Как это получилось? Что это вообще? Как это?
Ну, это, я думаю, это надо у них спросить, потому что мы
Мы
всегда
как это можем объяснить?
проходим вместе, даже по одному коридору, через одного таможенника, этого полицейского. Один проходит, второй ждет, и все. Мы по коридору вместе проходили, мы всегда вместе. А как это у них, это, я думаю, это лучше им спросить, как это все получилось в одну секунду и в одно и то же время, и еще по раздельности.
Просто то, что мы даже вместе всегда проходим, у меня
Yeah.
чуть-чуть посильнее с английским языком. Если какие-то проблемы возникают, я помогаю
То есть вы
Руслану.
проходили вместе?
Мы
Вы не
вместе.
проходили по раздельным
Мы
коридорам?
никогда по раздельно
Да,
не
мы
проходим, мы
не
всегда
То
проходим
есть
проходим
по
вместе.
эти
раздельности.
картинки это что? Этого не было, это
Если бы-
монтаж или что?
Это я не знаю,
Если бы мы еще помнили, когда это было.
как это все это у них происходит. Когда ты прилетаешь, улетаешь, посещаешь какие-то места, никогда не обращаешь на камеры, потому что это неинтересно. Как снимают, где снимают, что снимают. Мне это неинтересно. И я не обращал на это внимания. Ну, а если они напечатали такие фотографии и еще такое время, я думаю, это лучше у них спросить.
Что вы вообще думаете про дело Скрипалей? Кто
Я-
их отравил? Вы вообще об этом
Тяжело
думали,
сказать.
думаете
Но
до
как
того,
мы думаем,
как
мы
увидели
в
свои
этом,
фотографии по телевизору?
мы в этом живем. Но единственное, что хотелось бы,
Я
если
пока
реально
не-
когда-нибудь отравителей найдут, то хотя бы перед нами бы извинились.
Кто отравители?
Даже за то, что
Англичане.
даже за то, что мы последние, я не знаю, сколько это муссируется уже там, неделю, 5 дней. Для меня, я даже в датах потерялся. Потому что реально
Вы
просто
представить
даже
не можете, что произошло вообще с нашей
машину не
жизнью,
выйти,
с
машину
нашей
не выйти
жизнью.
заправить спокойно.
Что произошло
Вас
с
так
нашей
прям
жизнью?
узнают? Что
Но
машина
мы так
не-
думаем, что нас узнают. Как мы себя можем вести по-другому, если по телевизору показывают?
Каждый день на весь экран 2 фотографии. Включаешь радио,
Это просто страшно.
Баширов, Петров, включаешь телевизор, Баширов, Петров. А как бы вы жили? Мне реально, это мне страшно, я опасаюсь, я напуган, и я не знаю, я не знаю, что будет завтра.
Я уже,
Мы-
я
мы
уже даже
поэтому к вам-
стараюсь,
мы сюда поэтому к вам и пришли.
я даже стараюсь не смотреть уже новости, он смотрит, я просто иногда спрашиваю, есть что-то новое, и жду ответа, что да не, все по-старому. И он опять, да, есть, накручивают. Сколько уже можно?
Что вы собираетесь делать дальше?
Вообще непонятно. Просто хочется, чтобы нас оставили в покое.
Вы же теперь, как я понимаю, не выездные. То есть, если вы покинете пределы России, с большой степенью вероятности вас арестуют.
Но мы очень
Я
надеемся,
всё-таки, я
что
надеюсь,
эта
что-
ситуация разрешится.
Оно, да, разрешится, и все-таки та сторона английская, она принесет извинения свои за вот это все, что они подняли, что все-таки найдут тех людей, которые причастны с этой историей со Скрипалями, вот, и что хоть как-то изменится наша жизнь.
Вообще вся эта ситуация это просто какое-то фантастично фатальное совпадение. И все. В чем наша вина?
Просто хотелось, чтобы нас хотя бы сейчас оставили в покое. Хоть немножко в покое оставили. Просто хотя бы, чтобы успокоились.
Хотя бы наши СМИ,
Наши, в
ваши
смысле,
коллеги.
российские?
Хоть
Мы
кто-то
даже
может
немного
спокойно
понимаем,
жить.
что будет после этого интервью. И
Я не знаю, что
нам в
будет
любом
завтра.
случае вообще придется.
Да вы станете героями всех ток-шоу.
Ну, не хотелось бы. Просто хочется спрятаться и спокойно отсидеться все это время.
Просто
Такой
чтобы
популярности
отстали
нам точно не нужно.
Просто чтобы отстали от нас.
Уже реально нету сил.
Устали.
Просто есть возможность, если есть такая возможность, просто оставьте нас, пожалуйста, в покое и все. Через вас мы хотим обратиться ко всем, вашим коллегам в том числе. Даже если вдруг нас кто-то будет узнавать, потому что мы не можем просто сидеть дома и никуда не выходить, то, друзья, не доставайте мобильные телефоны. Ну, я не знаю, как это еще попросить. Просто хочется спокойствия. И я понимаю, что к нормальной жизни мы, наверное, вернемся не так скоро, как этого бы хотелось.
Просто чтобы не
Ну,
доставали, хотя бы сейчас.
Спасибо. Спасибо, что пришли к нам на канал.
Спасибо, что вы нас
Спасибо вам
выслушали.
большое.
Вы позвонили
Thank you. Mr. Murphy, Commander Murphy, you have given evidence about your long and eventful policing career. But I imagine that notwithstanding your long and eventful career, seeing that interview came as something of a surprise.
Yes, a surprise is probably a slight understatement. It was quite a shocking thing to see, actually, and unexpected, but equally, for various reasons, quite welcome for them to go on TV like that.
Well, I have a few questions to ask you, but before I do, tell us a little more about your reaction, why you were surprised, and why you found it welcome.
I mean, I think, well, the first thing to say is their acknowledgement that it's them in the images that we produced. As we've seen here in this public inquiry, we've presented a lot more information about the CCTV that we have and their movements, and clearly at that moment in time we had only put out a small number. I think, as you saw, it was 9 pictures of them, and so to firstly strongly indicate it was them in those photographs is helpful, because clearly it demonstrates that the remainder of the photographs we have of them are the same. So unexpected and surprising in that respect to see them do that. But secondly, obviously their account was very different from the movements that we actually saw. And clearly they provided other information about their potential movements while they were here, which we were able to use and see if we could demonstrate whether anything that they had said could be borne out by the evidence. It wasn't, but quite apart from the fact that they did spend 40 minutes near enough in a train station and have a coffee, but that was the extent of which it would appear their information was accurate.
One of the features of certainly the early part of the interview was their emphasis on their desire to go to Salisbury as a tourist destination.
Yes.
Was that in any way consistent with what you knew about their movements in Salisbury?
It wasn't at all, no.
We've talked about Fishton Street and you turn left or right at the end of the Station Approach Road. Consistently, they took the left turn. Is that something that tourists would do?
Not at all. They were heading towards a residential area of Salisbury as opposed to the tourist area. I mean, it needs to be said, of course, at the end of Journey 3, the 33 minutes is a good example, but of course they were in the town centre during that time. And of course we saw yesterday on the map, so that where the cathedral was, quite possible that they had time in that 33 minutes to visit the cathedral at that moment in time. So to be entirely fair, that there's an element of that 33 minutes that might have put them in that location, but no, routinely, even after the 33 minutes, the first thing they do is head back to a residential area of Salisbury in which the Scripple address is located.
Again, at the very start of the interview, there was a suggestion that this was a long-planned trip to visit Salisbury. We've seen the evidence about the timings of the booking
Yes.
of both the City Stay Hotel and the flights.
Yes.
Was that, remind us, when were those?
So the 1st of March and in early March, so immediately before travel, and so not consistent with their having a long planned trip.
We noticed when we looked through the photographs that were published at the press conference, that in terms of the photographs from Salisbury, there were more for the Sunday than there were for the Saturday. In fact, there was only one from the Saturday, was there not?
I believe that's
At
correct.
the station. And do you agree that one of the features of the account that the two men gave in that interview is that there are some quite striking discrepancies about what they did or didn't do on that Saturday?
Yes, there was a suggestion from them that they spent 30 minutes, but the snow was so bad they couldn't get round the town. Also a suggestion that they couldn't use public transport, which of course they did for their journey down and their return journey. And when you look at the CCTV as well, clearly, whilst there's some snow on the ground, cars are driving around and everyone's walking around, and as did they. And so, yes, not consistent at all with what we found in the CCTV.
Another aspect of it was the time they spent in Salisbury. They
Yes.
started by saying they only spent 30 minutes in Salisbury that day, then said they spent an hour there.
Yes.
In fact, it was substantially over 2 hours.
Yes.
There is at least a suggestion that they visited Old Sarum. Was that possible on your understanding of their movements?
Not on what we've seen of their movements, no.
Yeah, I was puzzled about that. Were they actually saying that they'd been to Old Sarum?
Well, so if we could, I'll show
We
you.
went to see Old Sarum, I think.
I don't want to put it too high. If we could go to the transcript, it's INQ 005843.
Yes, I've got that transcript, and as often happens, it's not as it were word for word with whatever appeared on the screen.
No. So there are you will recall there are several references to wanting to go to see Old Sarum, but then at page 3, about halfway down.
Yes.
Well, if we start a little higher up, we see Petrov says we really wanted to visit Old Sarum and the cathedral. You see that, sir?
Yes.
So we decided to get it done on the 4th. The interviewer said, get it done, get what done? The sightseeing. Look to visit the cathedral, to visit Old Sarum, and then did you see it? And yes, we saw it. It's not clear, I would suggest, whether they meant the cathedral or Old Sarum, but that's as far as it goes.
Yes.
On that basis, they certainly couldn't have made it to Old Sarum at that point. But clearly, during the period of time of Journey 3, they may well have visited the cathedral.
We will come later this morning to look at travel patterns. Come on, so let's not get into that now. But in high level, they describe their business, supplements, vitamins, and so on. What was your reaction to that?
So we haven't found anything to suggest that's the case at all. And actually, many of the trips they suggest are business. Often their visa applications show them as being tourists and on tourist travel. But we found nothing to suggest that that was the case. And of course, any of their activity here supported that in any way.
And will we come to see later that one of the recurring features for both of those men in their visa applications is the inconsistencies in terms of the explanation, the accounts they give of their employment, in fact?
Yes, of their employment, of their finances. Yes, there's a lot of inconsistencies in their visa applications. And also, in some cases, some duplication.
Yes. That's all I want to ask you about the interview itself. But before we move away from this subject, could I ask that we look at your witness statement, please? So it's INQ 006056, page 46. Paragraph 210 and 211. So you at paragraph 210, you give us some detail about the Prime Minister's announcement, the very first announcement. And then you say this: the Russian state and its supporters tried to obfuscate and undermine the investigation. You describe disinformation, counter-narratives. You suggest that the interview we've just seen is another example of that. And then at paragraph 211, you say, in my view, the Russian disinformation campaign further supports the conclusion that the Russian state was responsible for the poisonings of Sergei and Yulia Skripal, D.S. Bailey, P.C. Bell, Charlie Rowley, and for the death of Dawn Sturgess. I don't want you to go beyond your role as an investigator, but you were, as we've heard, the lead investigator for Operation Katerva, and we've heard about your involvement in the other investigations. So with that in mind, can you expand on what you say here about the impact and your understanding of the purpose of what you describe as the Russian disinformation campaign?
So I think this was something we also saw in previous investigations, like the Litvinenko inquiry. So, but from the very start of this inquiry, in this investigation, under Operation Wadana, we began to see a publicly delivered narrative by senior members of the political system in Russia make comments that sought to distance themselves from any involvement in what was happening. At one point, even suggesting that, in fact, this was something that had been conducted by the UK in order to be able to suggest that it was Russia and blame them for something that we'd done ourselves as part of a sort of bizarre and surreptitious intelligence operation of some variety. So we saw that a lot during this process. And this interview was part of that, really, where it was entirely surprising to see the two main subjects of interest of our inquiry at that time feature in TV, but it was exactly the same thing, where they were basically trying to suggest there were alternative explanations for the things that we were saying or that we were seeing happening in Salisbury. And it happened a lot, and that included in official communications into government through diplomatic communications throughout this process.
Thank you. We can take that down. I'd like to move on then, please, Commander, and I want to address the identities of the three men we've referred to as Petrov, Bosherov and Fedotov.
Yes.
You made it clear at the outset of your evidence that even though we've agreed to use those names for convenience, and they are, after all, the names under which they've been charged,
Yes.
you made it clear that your assessment was that those were aliases and not their true identities. And I'd like to go through the three individuals one by one to see the evidence you have for making that assessment. And starting, please, with Bosherov, if we can go to the police report, so it's INQ 005820, page 58. And paragraph 184, you say the individual known as Ruslan Bosherov, which is the name used on his visa application to enter the UK in March 2018. Just pausing there, we've looked at that application,
yes.
Have we not? Has been determined to be Anatoly Vladimirovich Chapiga, primarily on the basis of the following factors. And then if we could scroll the page down, we see those factors, and we'll look at some of the detail in a moment.
Yes.
First of all, information within visa applications and financial documents indicating links between Bosherov and his father, Vladimir Maximovich Chapiga. Secondly, open source information from the website of a Russian military school which links Bosherov and Anatoly Chapiga. Images from a wedding showing a likeness between Bosherov and Chapiga. And finally, inconsistencies across visa applications.
Yes, correct.
And we'll start, in fact, with the last of those. And those inconsistencies, is this right, relate to employment, as we've mentioned, and also bank details.
Correct, yes.
In fact, if we can go on in the police report to page 61, we will see an explanation of this point. It's paragraph 192. We'll look at it here, Commander, and then look at the documents themselves.
Yes.
So the point that you make, it's a comparison, is it not, between three different visa applications?
Yes, it is, yes. So 2 to the Netherlands and 1 to the UK.
Yes, and this part of the report relies on letters provided, that were provided by Bosheroff in support of his application, which purported to come from his employer.
Yes, correct.
And so in the first case, there's little a visa application to the Netherlands. We see supported by a signed letter dated the 29th of March 2016, showing that he worked for a company called Service VIP with a salary in February 2016, and that's the month to focus on, is it not?
Yes.
Of 70,000 rubles. A subsequent visa application to the Netherlands 6 months or so later,
Yes.
5 months later. A near identical letter, so still saying that he was employed by the same company, but it showed a different salary, in fact, nearly double the salary for that same month, February.
Yes, correct.
And then the visa application, this is the UK visa application that we've seen, is it not?
Yes.
November 2017, saying that he'd been an employee of a completely different company in a timescale that
Yes.
completely covered the timescale referred
The
to
previous
in
two.
the letters that went to the Netherlands, with, again, a different salary.
Yes.
So if we could just look then at INQ 005819, it's the graphics pack, at page 122. Helpfully reproduce the 3 letters. Commander, is that right?
Yes, correct. Yes.
We don't need the text at the top, so if we could just try and zoom in on the 3 letters. Do you see on the left-hand side, I think it's right to say the letters are in the order that we've just looked at them.
Yes, they are.
So the first 2 are the letters sent to the Netherlands. The last one is the UK.
Yes, correct.
So we will remind ourselves, in fact, the application was the 29th of March, so the same date as this first letter on the left-hand side, we can see.
Yes.
We see it's the name of the company at the top of the page, Service VIP. Yes?
Yes.
And then details of salary given in the list at the bottom there. February 2016, it's 70,000 rubles.
Yes.
And then if we move across to the middle letter, it's a different application, again to the Netherlands. Later in 2016, a letter, same employer, but there, the salary given for February 2016. So this is not a question of him having had a raise subsequent in between times.
Not at all, no. It's the same month,
It,
same year.
the salary given for that same month is 120,000 rubles.
Yes.
And I haven't, perhaps we should just note that if we could go back to the first letter, Mr. Gusak, the general manager of Service VIP, says that Mr. Bosheroff had been employed with them for more than a year. Do you see
Yes.
that?
Yes.
He gives a little bit more detail in the second letter. If we could go to the second letter now, the August letter, he says that Mr. Bosheroff had been employed with them since March 2012, so 4.5 years or
Yes.
so.
Yes.
That is relevant then if we come to the third letter, which was supplied in support of a UK application a year or so later.
Yes.
We see a letter from a completely different company. It's dated November 2017, but significantly it asserts that Mr. Bosheroff had been employed since September 2011
Yes.
with a different salary.
Yes.
So inconsistencies across those 3 letters.
Yes.
Now that doesn't suggest that he's a spy. It just suggests that he is providing inconsistent and arguably fake documents in support of a visa application.
Yes, absolutely. And a bit later on, I know we'll come to it, we also see some duplication then between some of these letters being used in different names. So not these particular ones, but other letters that
No.
are the same.
So let's just go back to the police report because there's one further entry of a similar nature.
Yeah.
So INQ 005820, please, page 61. This is, it's similar in the sense this is also about material provided in support of a visa application, but we're now looking at sort of banking details rather than employment.
Correct, yes.
And we can see this paragraph. It refers to the Netherlands visa application of August 2016, so the second of the ones we were just looking at.
Yes.
And it refers to a letter purportedly from his bank,
Yes.
giving details of his bank account and the balance in that account.
Yes, correct.
And well, can you tell us what is the point about this?
So the point about this is those details are then, in nearly all detail, replicated in a further letter provided by Petrov, so including account numbers and other information, but in Petrov's name in a subsequent visa application as well. So, so the bank balance even was listed as the same in addition to the account number on an application made by Petrov subsequently.
Yes. So
Have we got those?
yes, we're going to them now. So the comparison here is between not documents provided by the same person, but two different people, significantly, one of them being Petrov.
Yes, that for all intents and purposes are pretty much identical, with a few details, especially the name changed between those two letters, but purporting to represent genuine letters in a visa application.
It's page 124, please, of the graphics pack. So 5819, page 124. So on the left-hand side, is this the letter in fact supporting Petrov?
It is.
It doesn't matter which order we take them in, does it?
No, this is the letter for Petrov, yes.
And do we note then, apart from seeing his name, first of all, in the second paragraph, the account number, very long account number,
Yes,
starting 4230,
yes,
and also of significance, just below that, the balance of 856,000
yes,
odd rubles.
yes. Even down to the 0.10.
0.10. We'll note also perhaps we can note the date on which the account is said to have been opened, 10th of January 2012.
Yes,
In each case, is that?
Well, so if we bear those 3 points in mind, the account number, date of opening, and the balance,
Yes.
we then compare it across the page with the letter that was provided by Bosherov. The name is obviously different. What about the account number, Commander?
the account number is the same in this case.
The date of opening the account?
I think it's a slightly different date of opening the account.
So that has been changed,
Yes,
but the balance.
is the same.
So, more evidence of, shall we say, fraudulent visa applications. With these documents, a link to Petrov,
Yes,
which is that something we should regard as significant?
I think it is, yes, given the fact we've seen them travel and my assertion that they are travelling operationally as members of the GRU and 29155. It's also indicative of there being a group of documents by which some details are edited in order to support visa applications as part of their alias travel.
But still, no suggestion in anything we've seen so far that Bosherov is not that individual's real name.
Yes, correct.
But let us move.
Mr. O'Connor, are you moving on from visa applications by Bosherov?
No. Well, yes. We're sticking with Bosherov, but we're about to move away from
You put the police report in. I wondered whether paragraph 190 was meant to cover the same ground or different ground.
Give me a moment, sir.
Second line,
Paragraph 190.
190, UK, it refers to a UK visa application commenced on the 26th of September 2016,
Yes.
which wasn't, I think, one of the three that...
No.
We looked.
This is a comparison within UK visa applications.
Yes, between two letters provided claiming to represent employment.
And tell us, I mean, so the distinctions here are less marked. Is that fair?
Yes, that's fair.
And I think it's fair to say they are consistent with Bosherov having received a raise between two different visa applications.
Yes, that's correct, because one is dated 2011, one is dated from the 7th of November 2017, suggesting a slightly different role within the company and a different salary, a doubling of the salary.
Well, yes. The first of the two is 26th of September 16. Is that right?
Yes, that's the application for the visa, sir, yes.
Yeah. Saying director of Energo for such
Yes, since the 1st of September.
150,000 rubles a month,
Yes,
whereas 13th of November, as I say, it's a year later.
Yes.
And it's double.
yes.
Right, got it. And is there any connection or apparent connection or possible connection between Energo Forsash, whatever it may be, and what was said on the interview about having a business in health supplements and the like?
So it's been very difficult for us to gain information, as I'm sure you can imagine,
I can.
from companies in Russia.
Right. So, yep.
So I will now move on to a slightly different topic, although remaining with Mr. Boshoff, but just looking at the clock, I wonder if that would be a convenient moment for a short break.
Yes, of course. 25 to 12, please.
before the break, we were focusing on Boshoff,
Yes.
and we will continue to do so. We were looking at documents associated with visa applications, which looked as though they might well be fraudulent.
Yes.
But so far, we haven't seen any material which suggests that Boshoff is not that individual's real name.
Yes.
Now, I'd like to move on, though, and to look at some open source material which does link the individual we have been referring to as Boshoff with the name Chapiga.
Thank you.
And if we can start by going within the police report, please, so INQ 005820, starting on page 59, paragraph 188, just to introduce this point, you refer to a town called Blagoveshensk, perhaps,
Yes.
and a Russian military school there, the Far Eastern High Military Command School, referred to as DVOKU.
Yes.
And the subject that I want to pursue now is about open source photographs within that school. And so if we go down, there is a wall within that school, as they're not sometimes referred to as the Wall of Heroes.
Yes.
And we will look at some photographs in a moment, but can you describe to us what this particular evidence relates to?
Yeah, so this is a wall of individuals who appear to have received the Hero of Russian Federation Award. And so within that school are photographs and citations for individuals that have received that award. As you'll see, one of those individuals is believed to be Chapiga with his photograph.
Yes. Just before we come to it, the Hero of the Russian Federation Award, is it, in the inference is it's a very prestigious award to receive?
Yes, well, whilst I'm not entirely familiar with all of the reasons it's given, it is actually, as I understand it, appointed by the President of Russia and is one of Russia's highest awards for its citizens, particularly in the military.
And what we're going to look at it, I expect, but in which kind of premises is this to be found?
Well, we've just heard it's within this military school, sir. It's referred to. You can see paragraph 188. It's still on the screen.
That's as much as the open source material tells us. Is it? It's a military school.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, let's look at the photograph, please. So, can we start with INQ 004636? That is part of the wall, I think.
Yes.
And the photograph to which you referred, direct us to it.
It's the photograph, if you see the three rows, it's the middle row and the right-hand photograph of the middle row.
It's edged in red.
Yes.
There is actually an enlarged version. If we could go, please, within the graphics pack, INQ 005819, page 125. Yes, so it's actually a collage. But if we can zoom in on the bottom right-hand corner, that's obviously the same photograph. And I think we can read in the Cyrillic that says Chapiga, does it?
Yes, it does. Yes.
Anatoly Vladimirovich Chapiga.
Chapiga, that's correct.
Anatoly Vladimirovich.
Yes, sir.
Right.
This is an issue on which Bellingcat have had something to say.
Correct.
Let us, if we may, go to the Bellingcat article which explored this issue in a little more detail. So it's INQ 005779, please. And we can see, first of all, the date, October the 2nd. We discussed yesterday the timing of this run of Bellingcat articles.
Yes.
Starting in September 2018, so around the time of the press conference?
Yes, so just after the press conference, we began to see Bellingcat publishing some articles relating to the two individuals we'd named.
And is it a fair summary that the early articles from Bellingcat were focused on trying to identify and understand the background of Bosherov and Petrov?
Correct.
And this is one of those articles, not the very first, but one of the early stage Bellingcat articles. And we won't read it through, but if we go over to the second page, they publish. Yes, so if we could scroll up, please. They publish a number of different photographs of what's described as this wall of heroes, do they not?
They do, yes. Their purpose here, I believe, is to show a time frame by which that award was likely to have been provided.
Exactly. So if we look just underneath here, we can see there's a photograph in July 2014, and there's a gap there, isn't there, on
Yes.
the right-hand side of the wall?
Yes, by the star there, yes.
Yeah. We can always scroll back to this one, but if we go up a page, please, to the next page, please. Yeah, so we can scroll in, if we could zoom in there. This, I think, was from 2016, and we can see the gap at the far end is filled in.
Yes,
2017. Sorry. Oh, I see there's somebody there.
yes.
Yes, sorry, it's 2017.
Yeah.
Is that the photograph we've just been looking at? So
It is, yes. Marked as-
the furthest away in the middle, on the middle line.
yes, nearest the star on the middle line on the right-hand side. Thank you.
So, as you say, Commander, the point that Bellingcat are driving at here, apart from the fact that the photograph appears to be of Chapiga, is that there's an interval of a couple of years between about 2014, 2017, which seems to be the time at which this photograph was put up.
Yes, and I think that timing becomes significant later when if we get to talk about some travel information as much as we can. And the point here, of course, is that image bears a strong resemblance to
Yes.
Bosherov.
And we will come back to another similar piece of evidence about timing of the publicity of this particular award.
Yes.
But then, yes, if we can carry on scrolling, please. Within the Bellingcat article, first of all, we see, I think this is very similar, or not the same photograph we've already looked at. And then if we don't need to stop there, we've seen that one. If we keep going to the next page, there, that's the photograph we've just looked at on the wall.
Yes.
Chapiga next to it, a still from the RT video.
Yes.
We'll hear, in a different context, some evidence about Bellingcat undertaking some sort of expert facial identification.
Yes.
Is that, I mean, we can all sit here and look at those two photographs and draw our own conclusions about whether they may be the same person or not. Is that, without wanting to be critical, what the police have done, or have you undertaken anything more expert?
No, so we haven't done anything more expert than that. We have referred to this as strong resemblance within the process. We haven't engaged facial recognition. At the time this information came in, it was probably less of a thing, if I'm honest with you, but
Yes.
we're in a slightly different position now.
Thank you. Moving on, but as it were, just to one side of this, we heard that about this particular school,
Yes.
DVOKU, where this wall we've just been looking at is located. Is there also evidence that you've obtained to suggest that this particular school may have been local to where Bosherov grew up?
Yes.
And if we look, please, for these purposes, back at the police report, so 5820, page 59. It's paragraphs 186 and 187, Commander. Can you just summarise the point being made here?
Yes, the point being made here is the details that Bosherov here provides for his parents in an application for the UK visas, provides their details and their places of birth. And then subsequently, in 2011, 2013, two in 2011, sorry, 3 in 2011, so February, November, and December of 2011. The same individual, Ruslan Bosharov, sends money via Western Union to an individual with the surname Chapiga, Vladimir Chapiga. And the records of Vladimir Chapiga, with apart from the name, seem to match very significantly with the visa applications for Bosharov's claimed father, named Timur Bosharov, in the application. So if you go to 186, you'll see 1st of December 1953.
Well, just
Oh,
pause
sorry,
there,
go
because
ahead.
we'll go to the document. So it's a question of looking at both documents,
Yes.
seeing what Bosharov has said about his father in
Yes.
his visa application,
Yes,
and then comparing that with these payments made to a man named Chapiga,
yes,
which we see from some bank transactions.
yes.
So if we could go, first of all, to Bosharov's visa application, and this is a different part, isn't it, of the application we looked at yesterday.
Yes.
So if we could go, please, to INQ 004443, page 28. And if we could enlarge, please, the details given of the father's background. So we see, as you say, Commander, first of all, a man, the father of Bosharov, Timur Bosharov,
Yes.
and his date of birth being the 1st of December 1953. That's of significance.
Yes.
And he's also, the place of birth is given as Amarskaya Oblast. I think that's
It is.
abbreviation of Oblast.
It's
is
an
it
area,
not?
yes.
And if we could just scroll down and look at the mother's details as well. Tatiana Bosharova, she also gives, or rather he also gives her place of birth as Amarskaya, the same place.
Yes, correct.
And I think those are the details we need from that document.
They are.
So if we could then look at the bank transactions, and for that we go to the graphics pack. So INQ 005819, page 121. Just to orientate ourselves, these are some form of bank statement. They're all payments made by Bosharov.
Yes, these are Western Union money transfers.
We can see from, it's a grid, there are actually 4 transfers that are described on this document.
Yes,
And it's the bottom 3 that we're concerned with, is that right?
correct.
And can we see then,
So Ruslan Bosharov had an account in that name as long ago as 2011, 2012?
Yes, sir. So this is actually the Western Union money transfer from that time, using that name in 2011.
Right.
perhaps if we could, you see the second line of this grid, if we could zoom in on the box with the blue markings in it, which give the detail. No, so, I'm sorry, so that's not, yes, and if we could zoom in even further on that box just with the blue markings in it, 3 in from the right-hand side. That's it. So I think it is just about legible. The name, this is the person to whom the transfer is being made by
Correct.
Bosharov.
Yes.
It's Vladimir Maximovich Chapiga.
Yes.
Date of birth, the 1st of December 1953.
Correct.
And we will recall that's the same date of birth as Bosharov gave for his father on
Yes.
that visa application form.
Yes.
And towards the bottom is the address. Is there significance there?
Yes, the address is significant to the military school that we were talking about.
Yes, which we'll come back to. And the box in the blue on the right-hand side we just see in shot, that is a town which is nearby to the military school as well, isn't it?
Yes.
So, thank you. We can zoom back out, but those details, the name of the recipient of the funds and his date of birth are the same for each of those 3 payments, aren't they?
They are.
And is that the point that we're supposed to get from this document, that the man called Bosherov is making repeated payments to an elderly man called Chapiga,
Yes.
who has the same date of birth as his father, the person he described as his father on the visa
In the
application.
visa application, yes. So we're seeing crossover here between the visa application information provided by Bosherov for travel to the United Kingdom and then financial information in the name of Bosherov, but to an individual with the surname Chapiga, but matching some of the details in
Well,
that
same
visa.
year of birth. Not as elderly as all that, but the same year of birth anyway.
Everything's relative. So. And then picking up on that last point, the address of this middle-aged man called Chapiga is a town called Berezovska, which one can take to be the Chapiga family home.
Yes.
And then if we go on in the graphics pack
Yeah.
to page 133,
Beresov.
and if we could look at the, enlarge the map there. This place, Berezovka, is that the place that's highlighted with the orange?
In the orange, yes.
And is it right that the school, the DVOKU school, is highlighted towards the bottom of the map?
Yes, in the green.
So local to the Chapiga family home.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. We can take that down. Sticking with Bosherov, I think finally move on to one other set of documents relating to a wedding.
Yes.
As I understand it in the police report, they are, first of all, are said to be a separate source tending to make a link between the person we know as Bosherov and the name Chapiga.
Correct.
They also, something new here, provide some evidence of a link not just to the Russian military or the Russian state like the Wall of Heroes, but to the GRU and in particular Unit 29155.
That's correct, yes.
Just before we go to it, we heard yesterday your sort of headline summary that these three men were all members of Unit 29155.
Yes.
It is referred to in the police report as a part of the GRU that is known about publicly. What is known about publicly about Unit 29155?
So there's quite a lot reported on 29155. They frequently are reported to have been involved in operations across the world, either destabilising operations, and in some cases widely reported other poisonings or attacks or other covert information activity on behalf of the Russian government.
So those are, by the sound of it, things that other people have said about
So, yes.
Unit 29155.
Yes.
Is there anything which comes from them, as it were, themselves on open source?
Not that I've seen, sir.
No. But repeated allegations, you say, of operations across the world.
Thank you, sir.
And another feature of the reporting and commentary about this unit is the name of its leader.
That is correct,
And
yes.
who is that?
Andrei Veryanov.
And is that relevant to the wedding pictures to which we will come?
Yes, it is, yes. This is the daughter of Andrei Veryanov getting married.
Right. And if we could go then in the police report, please, so INQ 005820, page 61, just to see what the police report says about this issue. Paragraph 191. Tell us.
So on the 29th of July 2017, the daughter of Andrei Veryanov was married. The location of the wedding actually is on a lake near a military base, which is also significant. Within the published images from this wedding, there are images that show the person we know to be Bosherov and a seating plan that includes the names, in this case, Alexei Chapiga, and I think an individual to be his wife, Galina Chapiga, sitting at table 1 at the wedding.
Yes. So if we, with that introduction, if we could please go to page 131 of the graphics pack, so it's 5819, page 131. This is a collage, is it not, Commander? We see
Yes.
we see the table plan. We'll come back to the table plan in a moment, as one can see by glancing at it. It's not exactly straightforward.
Yes.
But to focus first of all the wedding photographs. What do you suggest we see within those blue circles?
So I suggest we see the individual marked in blue circles is the person that we know to be Bosherov in those visa applications. And earlier when you saw the collage of photographs of Bosherov, one of these photographs was in that number.
Yes. We can see, sticking with the photographs for a moment, if we could just go to 2 other references, we could see some slightly better copies of, I think, identical or certainly similar photographs. First of all, INQ 005888, please. Yes.
Yes.
No blue circle, but I think we can remember who we're supposed to be looking at.
Yes.
And then 5890, please.
Yes. So the individual in the grey suit there that you see.
Yes.
Thank you.
Again, no expert facial analysis. It's a question of forming one's own view.
Strong resemblance. Yes.
Let's come back to the seating plan, if we may. Could we go to 005891? Perhaps we could enlarge it. I think we can see how this is supposed to work. The names down the sides with a link to one's table number.
Yes.
And I think the names that we're supposed to be focusing on are on the left-hand side of the board.
Yes, that's correct.
You, perhaps unsurprisingly, commissioned a translation
Yes.
of this exhibit or
Yes.
photograph, and we may go to it, please. It's INQ 005844, page 7. Even better, we can have it on this side, on the side of the screen. And so just casting our eyes down the left-hand side, please. First of all, can we see about, what's that, 5 entries down on
Yes.
the left-hand side, Alexei Chapiga,
There you go. Yes. And table number 1.
with a link to table number 1.
Yes.
So just to be clear, the name, when we looked at that part of the police report where you summarised your conclusions about the real identity of the man we've been describing as Bosherov, it was not Alexei Chapiga, but Anatoly Chapiga.
Yes.
So why, if his real name is Anatoly Chapiga, why would this seating plan list him as Alexei
I don't
Chapiga?
know entirely, but it would appear on this basis that it's either a shortened name or something like a nickname.
Just casting one's eye further down,
Yes.
you mentioned Andrei Averyanov.
Yes.
Just remind us who he is.
So he was a senior leader in 29155 with the GRU.
Even further down the left-hand side, Galina Chapiga, she's mentioned in the police report.
Yes. Believed to be the wife of Bosherov Chapiga.
And there is one other Chapiga. If we can look over on the right-hand side, do you see just below Andrei Averyanov on the left,
Yes.
Andrei Chapiga,
Yes.
not sitting at table 1?
No.
Can you help us?
Not entirely sure, no, who that is.
Are there any other names on that list that you regard as significant?
No, and importantly, whilst the individual that appears to be Bosherov is at the wedding, the Bosherov name does not feature in the table plan.
Yes, so there's an absence of a
Yes.
Bosherov on that list.
Yes.
This also was a piece of open source material, or a selection of open source material that has been that has featured in the Bellingcat reporting. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes, true.
And let us, if we may, just look at the Bellingcat report relating to this. It's INQ 005792. So again, a little bit later than the article we looked at a moment ago, but not that much. It's October, mid-October.
Yes.
We can see the headline. If we could just look at page 10 of that article, please. Do you know who that man is, Commander?
I believe that's a very on-off.
And I think if we go on to page 15, the Bellingcat article
Yes.
suggests that that is a picture, apparently the same man, Andrea Varionov, in fact, making a speech at. Is that the wedding?
At the
we've just
wedding.
been describing?
Yes.
When we were discussing the Bellingcat reporting in general yesterday and its relationship with your inquiries, I think your general comment was that, having noted that they have there's an overlap between their open source investigation and yours,
Yes.
you said that, broadly speaking, their conclusions were consistent, if not the same as yours.
Yes.
In this regard, their conclusion about the wedding is this one example of that being the case.
Yes, absolutely. So there's some elements of their reporting from the wedding which was important to our investigation, clearly, and helped us to understand who Topeka really was.
Thank you. We can take that down. And for the moment, at least, that's all I want to ask you about Bosherov stroke Topeka. Let's move, if we may, to Petrov. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I've got something at the back of my mind, Mr. O'Connor. I think it's to do with Bosherov. Just give me a second. It's to do with the patronymic, Mr. Murphy. If you're right, Bosherov's true name is Topeka and his father is Vladimir Maximovich
Topeka. So, yes.
And the Ovich works how?
I'm afraid I'm not entirely familiar with that, sir.
Right, all right, well, we'll pick that up somewhere else. But anyway, father is, if you're right, Vladimir.
Yes.
Is there evidence anywhere of the man calling himself Bosherov being associated with Vladimirovich?
Not that I'm aware of, sir.
No, I think I may have misunderstood that. All right, thank you.
So I think what you may have in mind, and perhaps we could go to it, is paragraph 189 of the police report. So it's page 60.
Yes.
INQ 0058.
Thank you. That is where I was thinking.
Commander, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the point that's being made here, paragraph 189, is that taking as one starting point the fact that there is someone called
Yes.
Anatoly Vladimirovich Topeka.
Yes.
Yeah.
If one was to try and identify his father, one would assume from the patronymic convention that that individual, the father's first name would be Vladimir.
Vladimir, that's correct, yes.
And we can go back to it, but looking at the at those bank transfer details, was that in fact the name
Yes.
the man to whom the funds were sent.
And there's also the date of birth connection. So yes, in answer to your first question, there's also the date of birth connection.
We saw that, the date of birth connection between the father identified on Bosherov's visa application
Yes.
and the individual,
Yes.
Chapiga. Yes.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. O'Connor.
So moving then to Petrov, just remind us, Commander, what do you consider to be Petrov's real name?
Alexander Mishkin.
Thank you. And if we can go in the police report still then, INQ 005820, page 63. First of all, is this right? There are similar inconsistencies in the paperwork associated with Petrov's visa applications,
Yes,
similar but different to those that we've looked at.
that's correct.
With regard to Bosherov, there is, of course, in one respect, which we'll come to, it's the same point that the bank account details and
Yes,
the balance details.
yes. Appears to have been adopted by both of them as part of the application process. Yes.
But starting, though, with paragraph 197, which we have here, help us, what's the point that's being described here?
So the point is that, in essence, as Petrov is copying details across from visa applications, some of it's not being recorded accurately, and as a result, then is recording details differently, but nonetheless, they seem to be the same details, just put in different places or with reference to different individuals.
So once again, we are focusing on the detail in the visa application form
Yes.
relating to the applicant's parents.
Yes,
And if your analysis is correct, then these would be fictional details, at least to some extent.
yes, absolutely.
And I think what you're describing in paragraph 197 then is a discrepancy between different visa applications made by Petrov.
Yes,
And it may be that we can look at those two different visa applications that are referred to in that paragraph on screen. So it's first of all 446, INQ 00446, page 7, and the other one is INQ 00445, page 33. And in fact, it goes over to it's 33 going on to 34, is it not? And it's the details for the father and the mother.
yes.
Does that help you, Commander? Can you point out what you say are the discrepancies there?
Yes, so if you look across the first application on the left-hand side then, so you have Ivan Petrov, 18th of July 1955. Forgive me for not saying the name, but at line 50 as a place of birth, with the mother's details as Petrova as a surname and Tatiana as first name, 13th of May 1959, with the date of birth, a place of birth location on line 55. If we read across, we are seeing, again, a different forename given for the father in this application, but against the same date of birth. And instead of the place of birth copying across from the father in the first application, it's actually copied across from the mother. So the place of birth in application number 2 on the right-hand side reflects the mother's place of birth in the first application. And then if we do the same with the mother on the right-hand side, Petrova and Tatiana are the same details as you'll see there with the same date of birth. But again, the place of birth has been transferred across from the father's place of birth in application 1 to the mother's place of birth in application 2. So in essence, some consistencies in data, some inconsistencies in data, but clearly moving details around, which suggests that a copying of details, but into the wrong boxes and locations. And my assessment of that is, if it was true, it would be very clear to you what the correct answer was. And this is an indicator of those details not being correct.
Yes. So there's two different things. One is the switching of the birthplaces of
Yes.
the parents,
Yes.
but also actually different first names for the father being entered on the two different forms.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. I think we can take those down. And if we could then go to a further similar point. So if we go back to the police report, please. So 5820, at the bottom of page 63, paragraph 200. This takes us back, Commander, to, as with Bosheroff, letters provided in support of visa applications relating to employment.
Yes.
And just glancing down at 200, and then it scrolls on to the next page, we see 3 examples given. This time, the applications have been made to 3 different countries.
Yes.
Sweden, the Netherlands, and then the UK. In fact, with 3 different companies
Yes.
said to be his employer, with all of them overlapping periods.
Yes.
Just to be, we'll look at the detail in a moment, but help us with this. Is it consistent with him simply having had 3 different jobs sequentially?
Not at all. It's consistent in the same way we saw with Bosheroff, really, where different details are provided in different applications, but those details are not checked against each other and overlap with each other.
So for these purposes, it's back to the graphics pack. INQ 5819, page 127, please. And it will help us to just note the certainly with the first one, which the letter on the left is in Russian.
Yes.
But this is the one that relates to the Swedish visa application, is it not?
It is.
And the important point is, first of all, that the employer, or the source of the letter, is a company called Mittel, and I think we see that in the sort of header.
Yes.
It says, the letter says that he's been employed there since the 13th of March 2012, and can we see that
Yes,
written
correct.
into the second line?
Yes.
And the salary, 45,000 rubles a month.
Yes. And it's an application dated on the 21st of January 2014.
Yes, it may be the date of the letter is the day before that.
Yes.
So January 2014, it said that he's worked at Mittel since early 2012.
Correct.
And then, if we go to the next letter, please. Which application was this made in support of, Commander?
This is the application to the Netherlands, which is, it was actually an application made on the 26th of March, but the letter's dated the same day.
Yeah, March 2016.
Sorry, yes, sorry.
So it's 2 years later or so.
Yes. Yeah.
This is a translation, and we can see from the top it says Metropolitan Police. This is a translation of the Russian. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
And the company name here?
The company name is AK. I'm afraid I'm not going to say it, but I'm not going to make a very good job of that. But Avet Kanika, by the looks of it, or something similar.
Not Mittel.
Not Mittal.
No. And as at March 2016, I think we can read this. It's
Yes.
in English, but the letter is stating that Mr. Petrov had worked for them for 2.5, 3 years since October 2013.
Yes, of course.
Which is obviously earlier than the date of the first letter.
The first letter, yes.
And then, if we can look at the third letter, this is a letter which was provided in support of a UK visa application.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, in October 2016.
I think there are 2 UK visa applications for Petrov, and they both refer to him working for DDEC Trade.
Yes.
So do you think it's significant here that we're seeing applications made to 3 different countries with 3 different employers?
Yes, I do. Yes, it's part of, I think, that overall using of different information to try and obfuscate any of that being genuine information.
So this letter, the DDEC, the UK application letter, dated November 2017.
Yes.
So again, a year and a half or so after the second one,
Yes.
but saying that Mr. Petrov had worked for that company
Yes.
since March 2015, which is earlier than the date of the second.
Yes, overlapping the second application. Yes.
Thank you. So, I mean, really, a similar issue to that we saw with Bosherov.
Yes.
And then if we could go back to the police report, please. So INQ 005820. And look at page, sorry. I think I might have given you the wrong reference there. Just bear with me a moment. Yes, in fact, if we could stay in the graphics pack and just go, so 5819, page 124. Just to remind ourselves, we've looked at this before. We looked at it for the purposes of Bosherov, but to compare the 2 letters from the bank.
Yes.
A similar, identical point applies to Petrov because he is the subject of the other letter.
Correct. Yes.
So with all of that, as we said with Petrov, would you agree with this? Certainly evidence of irregularities in visa applications, and in that very last document, the ones on the screen, a link with Bosherov.
Yes.
But no link with the name Mishkin on the material we've seen so far.
So far, yes.
But then, if we can please go back to the police report. So that is INQ 005829 and page 62, paragraph 196. We see there, we are now talking about passports.
Yes.
And the first sentence you say, in the passport used for his UK visa application. Just pausing there. We've gone in and out of these visa applications, just to a page here and a page there.
Yes.
But tell us, do those visa applications require the applicant to provide copies of the entirety of their passport?
Yes, certainly. Most of the visa applications we've seen in the inquiry require copies of the passport to be provided in that respect. So there are lots of copies of passports. Each of the visa files are actually quite large in terms of the volume of information within them.
Yes. And presumably they don't have to send the passport itself.
No, it's a copy usually, or sometimes a good quality copy, sometimes not such a good quality copy.
Yeah. So in the passport, a copy of the passport that was supplied with this particular UK visa application, Petrov gives his date of birth as the 13th of July 1979.
Yes.
His place of birth as, it's the same place, I assume it's the place referred to as Archangel in
Yes.
northern Russia.
Yes.
So that's the starting point. And that is, I think, to be compared with, now the next sentence says 2 passports in the name of Alexander Mishkin show a likeness to Petrov and give the same date of birth and the same place of birth. Is that
Forgive me,
right?
I believe it's 1 actually.
Right, well, there
Yes.
certainly is one, which we will look at.
Yes.
I think you're probably right that certainly in the material we have, it's only 1.
Yes.
Yes. So I'm sorry, could I ask you to stop the feed, please?
gather we're restarted, Mr. O'Connor.
Yes. Could we have back on screen, please, the police report, 5820, page 62? And it's paragraph 196. Commander, before we had a pause,
Yes.
we were looking at this paragraph. We had noted in the first sentence reference to a passport in the name of Petrov, which had been provided with one of his visa applications.
Correct, yes.
And then we had just, I think, agreed that certainly in the material that's available to us, there is in fact only one passport, but still a passport.
Yes.
In the name of Alexander Yevgenovich Mishkin, which shows a likeness to Petrov with the same date of birth and the same place of birth.
Yes, correct.
If we could go, please, to the graphics pack. It is INQ 005829. No, sorry, that's the police report. 5819, page 126. Are these the two passports to which you refer in the paragraph we've just looked at?
Yes, they are.
On the right-hand side, I think we see in the Cyrillic a passport in the name of Petrov.
Yes.
So is that the passport or the copy of the passport provided with the UK visa application?
Yes, I believe that's the case, yes.
And on the left-hand side, again in the Cyrillic, Mishkin.
Yes.
So that is the other passport.
Yes.
And just looking at the details that were mentioned. First of all, the date of birth.
Yes.
I think one can see fairly easily in both is the 13th of July 1979.
Yes.
And towards the bottom of each passport, we see, I think we can guess, in the Cyrillic, the word archangel.
Yes, which is the place of birth.
Yeah.
Yes.
What can you say about these two passports?
So this appears to be an example of genuine details of Alexander Mishkin being copied over to the alias passport details in the name of Petrov. So whilst the name has been changed, the date of birth and place of birth remain the same in both instances.
Same question, we'll come to the point about experts in a moment, but two pictures.
Yes.
What level of confidence do you have that they are the same person?
Strong resemblance, again, between those two images.
Is that a term? Is that a sort of term of art?
It is. It is really. So, in terms of, in most investigations, certainly in CT investigations, where we have not engaged the services of an expert, as would be the case today, strong resemblance is our commitment. It's the equivalent of highly likely in more general terms.
Are there one or more levels above that?
It would need to be expert evidence there that was then confirming it to a degree. And in this case, this resemblance is both one that you or I might look at and decide, and or our imaging staff working in our investigation within our digital team.
Well, the assessment of the significance of the photographs, the date of birth and the place of birth are, in the end, I think, probably for me, aren't they?
Yes.
So, yes.
Yeah.
Now, Commander, we've looked, do you agree, in a couple of instances, at open source material
Yes.
that you, in the course of your investigations, have looked at and taken from the internet and drawn what conclusions you see fit, in parallel with Bellingcat.
Yes.
So the Wall of Heroes and the wedding photographs.
Correct.
This passport is also something that Bellingcat have looked at, but the position is not quite the same, is it?
No.
Can you tell us?
Could you point me to?
All right. Well, we'll do it this way. Let's look at two different Bellingcat reports.
Thank you.
First of all, can we go to INQ 005515, please? Sorry, if we could just go to the first page of it to start with. So we see here the headline speaks for itself.
Yes.
Just to note, you see he's referred there to as Dr. Alexander Mishkin. Does that coincide with your assessment?
Yes, again, in terms of the work we've been able to do, gathering information, a lot of which is open source, it would appear Alexander Mishkin is in fact a doctor, yes.
And we note October the 8th, so again, that early period where there were a series of Bellingcat articles
Yes.
reporting on their investigation into the two individuals who'd been identified in September by Assistant Commissioner Basu.
Yes.
And this report, as we can see lower down that page, states it has conclusively identified the second suspect, that Petrov is an alias, and at the very bottom of the page we've identified Alexander Petrov in quotations to be in fact Dr. Alexander Yevgenovich Mishkin, a trained military doctor in the employ of the GRU.
Yes.
And then they say that their identification process included multiple open sources, testimony from people familiar with the person, as well as copies of personally identifying documents, including a scanned copy of his passport. And then it goes on to say the full identification process will be described in the upcoming full report.
Yes.
And there was, in fact, another report published the very next day. Wasn't
Yes.
there? But if we see just below that text, this is, in fact, the passport that we were just looking at.
It is.
And in summary, we'll come to the process in a moment, but in summary, this was not, as with the Wall of Heroes and the wedding, this was not an open source document that Bellingcat found on the internet, was it?
No, correct. So a lot of the ways in Bellingcat acquired their information was from individuals in Russia who provided access to information and data. I believe this to be one of those cases.
Yes. And we will see a little more detail. So if we could go on to INQ 005516, please. This then is described as the full report.
Yes.
We can see from the date it's the next day, October the 9th.
Yes.
Towards the bottom of the first page, do you see the last few lines? Multiple witnesses familiar with Alexander Mishkin and his family have confirmed to us that he, like Colonel Chapiga, Bosharov, is a recipient of the Hero of Russia Award, which is bestowed by a special decree by the Russian president.
Yes.
Is the suggestion that Petrov/Mishkin has also received that award, is that something that you have reached an assessment about?
We haven't been able to confirm that's the case, but yes, we have conducted a number of inquiries in that respect. Your first point as well, obviously, that lots of, I understand from appearing on the Russia Today interview, a lot of individuals then came forward and suggested that that individual purporting to be Petrov was very similar to and the same person as the person they knew to be Alexander Mishkin, which I think is being referred to here by Bellingcat.
Yes, and it may be relevant just if we look at the paragraph at the very top that's on the screen here. Although we're referring to these articles as Bellingcat articles, which is certainly accurate, do you see that in the paragraph starting in a preceding report, they refer to their reporting partner, the insider?
Yes.
What is the insider?
So I don't know what the insider is, but I think it was another media organisation that conducted activity in a similar way. Many of the Bellingcat articles were produced in partnership with other investigative journalists or other media companies.
Yes, I think we see, and tell me if you can help us, that the insider may have been based inside Russia.
I believe it was, but I'm afraid I don't know that for sure.
Well, we can maybe check that, but certainly if it was, then it would have had access to that sort of colloquial evidence of individual people reacting around this time to
that may
those
be a
people
bit of
being
a stretch,
identified.
Mr. O'Connor.
Well, we'll perhaps come back to the insider.
Can you just go back to the previous the first Bellingcat report, which was 5515. May not matter at all. Scroll down, please. And again, please. And again. Yep, and again. Stop. It may or may not matter, but the report says underneath the copy of the passport, lists real name and place of birth as somewhere called Loiga,
So,
which, unless the script is very odd, it doesn't.
I believe that's just a mistake. So I think
Yes,
we had them both reviewed by a translator here to assess that as the same details.
Yeah, all right, so that's simply a mistake. Thank you.
Thank you. I should just say it's in the same region as the original name anyway, so.
Oh, you've
I
looked it
believe
up.
so.
Thank you.
So I think this may be something that someone can look further into in further detail. But I think in fact, the word I've been describing as Archangel is Archangel Oblast, which is a reference to a territory, or what we would think of probably as a county. And Loiga is a village, which is referred to in other Bellingcat reporting.
May well be, but the document in question does not say what the text underneath it says. It's a very trivial point, but it's, I think, right.
So I'm just wondering whether the word 3 lines up from Archangel in Cyrillic is actually Loiga.
Loiga. Yes, I see.
It's a while since I did GCSE Russian, but I think that may actually be Loiga.
And if you were to look below to the bottom paragraph, who is Alexander Mishkin, it describes the village of Loiga in that region.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
I see. Well, that may be the answer, the explanation. Thank you very much.
I just wanted then to take you to a few references in the second Bellingcat article. So if we could go back to INQ 005516, please. We looked at the bottom of this page and the suggestion that Petrov may have been awarded the Hero of Russia Award. If we could go on to page 10, please. Or in fact, just briefly, page 2. There's a picture of Loiga, since we were talking about it.
Yes.
Volunteers to visit Loiga will be welcome. Page 10, please. Just below that grid, do you see the Bellingcat assertion that Mishkin Petrov studied and possibly graduated from the St. Petersburg Military Medical Academy, known as VMEDA?
Yes.
Is that something that you considered in the course of your investigation?
Yes, of course we considered that, yes. It's very difficult for us to gather information from those locations, but yes.
So you're not, it's not something that you've independently reached a view on?
No, it's not no.
And immediately below that, it's just an example of the different type of investigation, the different type of evidence that Bellingcat receive and then report. We see that one person who requested complete anonymity confirmed to Bellingcat that Mishkin indeed graduated from that academy, having been in a different class. They said they recognised Mishkin as Petrov from the RT interview, the one we saw.
Yes.
And in fact, they go on to say that many of the graduates from Mishkin's class had then been contacted by Russian security services over the last few weeks and instructed not to divulge his identity to anyone.
Correct.
But then we go on, at the bottom of that page, to a passage which relates to the passport we were considering a few moments ago.
Yes.
And you see there that Bellingcat report that they focused all their efforts on obtaining a photograph of Mishkin. And just before we go on, it's right, isn't it, that at even earlier stage, so in September 2018, at the very start of their investigation, Bellingcat gained access to the domestic passport files of Bosharov and Petrov.
I understand that to be the case from their reporting, plus I think also travel data as well in Russia.
Yes. So, I mean, I may have not used exactly the right term, but we're not talking about passports as we know them. They are
Yes.
sort of internal
Yes.
cards or identification cards of some sort.
Yes.
But the very early articles referred to those which they had managed to obtain from a source.
Correct.
But I think then they're here saying that in the intervening period, processes had been tightened and they weren't able to use the same process to get hold of a copy of Petrov's passport. They say as a result, requesting any source to provide the investigating team with access to his passport file was not an option. But then they go on to say that they were able to obtain a copy of his scanned passport pages from a source.
Yes.
And does that then, on your understanding, explain how the document we have been looking at came to be published?
Yes, it's a good example of how Bellingcat would follow a path to be able to gain access to that material.
And then just for completeness and to finish off this article, if we go over to the next page, we see another copy of the passport which we're familiar with. And then in the last paragraph here, there's a reference to Bellingcat requesting a forensic facial similarity analysis between the passport photo from his passport and his international passport dated 2006.
Yes.
And if we just scroll down to the next page, I think that, in fact, that should have read 2016. That certainly seems to be the comparison there.
Yes.
And there is some representation of the results of that expert analysis.
Yes, as a result of probability from the expert, yes.
Yes. You mentioned, as well as saying that this is not something that you had done,
Yes.
I think you said it was a developing expertise.
Yes, exactly. There have been experts for a long time doing this work, but in terms of facial recognition more broadly and its use in investigations today, it's still something that is developing, particularly in the digital sense. In this case, we've approached this professor from, I think it was Bradford University, actually, in order to do this work for them.
Thank you, Commander. We can take that down. So I was about to move on to Fedotov, and perhaps that's a good moment to break for lunch.
Yes, of course. 2:05 then, please.